Much of the foundation of the third criminal indictment against Donald Trump comes from the extensive and painstaking work of the January 6th committee. The bipartisan panel was formed in the summer of 2021, spent nearly 18 months investigating the insurrection, the plot to steal the 2020 election. The committee presented its findings in 10 public hearings last year. In December, released an extensive 845-page report, which gave prosecutors a roadmap to continue chasing leads and calling witnesses. Maryland Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin served on the January 6th Select Committee and is a professor of constitutional law, and he joins me now. It's good to have you, Congressman. Let me ask you to begin how you conceive of the relationship between the committee's work and the Department of Justice and Jack Smith's indictment.
Well, we created, with a legislative oversight committee, a factual reconstruction of the events leading up to January 6th and a description of Donald Trump's multi-pronged assault on American constitutional democracy and attempt to overthrow the election. And then that factual framework with the referral of 4 criminal charges that we synthesized it down to became the basis, at least theoretically, for the beginning of their work. Now, I know a lot of it had started before that, but I think it did help to structure their investigation and their thinking about it. And at the very least, it prepared all Americans for what was to come, because a lot of time has lapsed between now and January 6, 2021. And that period could have been filled up with a lot of propaganda and disinformation by Trump forces. But we told a story that penetrated the national consciousness and I think got people ready for these very dramatic charges, which are completely fitting Donald Trump's crimes.
You're someone you're a constitutional scholar, and I think you think a lot, about the sort of nation's second founding, the Reconstruction era amendments, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, and the laws associated with that time, and have cited Lincoln particularly quite a bit, and Lincoln's thoughts about insurrection, because that, of course, is what he was facing. How were you surprised, or what was your reaction to seeing that one of the indictments is a conspiracy to deny Americans rights under those Reconstruction laws?
Well, it was thrilling, because that count goes right to the heart of what was actually taking place. And, Lincoln said it best, where he said that an insurrection fundamentally is an assault on the very first principle of democratic government, which is that the people get to choose their own leaders. And there are lots of ways to steal an election. You can steal it with literacy tests, with poll taxes, with grandfather clauses, with terrorist violence, or by stealing the ballot boxes, throwing people's ballots away, or engaging in all of the different kinds of shenanigans that Donald Trump did leading up to January 6th. And there are people who've gone to jail for that. And, it's shocking to me that they think somehow they have a free speech right to engage in a violent insurrection or a political coup against American constitutional process.
One of the criticisms that was levied against your committee was that it was insufficiently adversarial. Now, I'll say that's just because Kevin McCarthy decided not to appoint members. When Nancy Pelosi rejected a few of the original proposed members, he just sort of took his ball and went home. Instead, there were other Republicans appointed, Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, quite famously. This will be an adversarial process, and do you think that's good? I mean, how do you conceive of the import of this trial and also the president mounting a defense?
Well, yes. I mean, of course, all of this is within the American rule of law and our system of justice. So Donald Trump starts off with the presumption of innocence. He has every right of due process. He's got a judge, Judge Raskin, who was herself a public defender and a criminal defense lawyer, who's extremely attentive to the rights of criminal defendants, but also understands that our Constitution has at least 6 different provisions that explicitly oppose insurrection and attempts to overthrow our government. So she's really the perfect judge for this case. This is where the case ultimately belongs. But we played a very important purpose in terms of public education about what happened to us. And it takes a village, a nationwide village, to deal with an attack like we saw on January 6th.
Do you think that the average voter, American, understands just how close it all came? Because I do think there's a little bit of, even people that don't like Donald Trump, he's sort of a ridiculous figure, but just the narrowness of the margin by which the American constitutional republic was preserved. Do you think people get that?
Well, if Mike Pence had caved in to all of the pressure and decided to step outside of his constitutional role and just proclaim Donald Trump to be the new president, or unilaterally nullified electoral college votes, as Trump and his people were egging him on to do, that would have changed everything. If, half of the police force had just walked off in despair, which they didn't, they were bloodied and wounded, but they fought until the very end, it would have changed everything. So we came extremely close as we should ever come in our lifetimes.
Congressman Jamie Raskin, always a pleasure. Thank you, sir.